Yes, another round of vulnerable sharing. I've really been touched this morning, and I wanted to talk about condemnation. My heart's really been hurting, and the feeling to me feels like watching parents fight, and as a child, and saying like, hey, like a certain helplessness, like, please stop fighting, please stop. And the way that I'm experiencing our collective pain right now feels to me to be like that. There's so much of me that is in the question and in the mind of that child, questioning how do we stop? How do we stop fighting and creating war and ideas about right and wrongness? And I've spent a lot of time looking at myself, recognizing that, if we are going to be the change that we want to see in the world, that's got to start from within. And I firmly believe, pointing myself back to myself, when I point a finger out, there's 3 fingers pointing back at me. And in every relationship I've ever been in, I've always done that, to the point of taking on more than what's my responsibility, to the point of minimizing my own feelings, that generate ultimately more feelings on top of that. Just such a huge learning curve of what that is to deeply care. And that sort of unrequited feeling within the realm of human. And my heart's hurting. My heart's looking for solutions. What are the words, God, that I can use? What is the frequency that I can embody that would end all war, all suffering? And I continually come back to things like separation, that as I sit in my own pain and discomfort and really, really seek to hold my own experience and my pain and listen. And I will say sometimes that is really, really challenging. Is to come back to these really clear messages. One is the original wound, that wound of separation, right? That moment where there became an idea outside of perfection that good and bad existed, that something other than isness, something other than the absolute okayness that all of life exists exactly as it is. And because that's within my knowing, I recognize then that there are different levels and layers within the psyche, within the mind, within the thoughts that generate feelings, that these feelings then create more thoughts, and it seems to be this kind of perpetual cycle within the loop of the mind. Equally, though, just what is the experience of being in the heart? And I also sit with doing unto others as you want them to do unto you is really important. And most of my life has been orienting to that, the simplicity of that. And yet, what to do, like in my case, I moved into a foreign country, what to do when everyone around you doesn't hold that same philosophy. Do unto others as I feel like I want to do. And that requires a different gaze that in time is asking for is really asking for another holding, a different kind of holding, and a deeper look. That is there somewhere here a choice that we're choosing how to show up? Or are these things also done to us? That we hurt others because we're hurting, and we don't know that there's another option. Do we care that there's another option? Or are we just in survival mode? Or is it just literally an innocent, ignorant, unconscious reality that we're so far from, the idea that wholesome holiness, that the embodiment of goodness is even possible. And these questions have led me to so many explorations, and really with the desire to see things as they are and to purify my own lenses. I have known all shadow. It feels like I've had to look at anger and loving my anger, loving those emotions I was never allowed to have, and having to violate my own boundaries for the sake of others, for their own well-being, and that they feel good, and to feel to love the resentment around having to do things that a child should not have to do, losing a childhood, all these things that I'm not special. There's nothing here that makes me different. It's just really being able to look at how this is in our world. That as a child we receive these things that create and distort, and then that creation grows up and distorts also, as much as we say, I don't want to be the parent that I have. And then of course that's on a bad case. I bless everyone whether they had that or not, but to come to reconciliation without bypassing any part of they did the best they could. They did do the best they could. But also there is a child in there that had experiences, that acts out, and that needs attention. And then as an adult, how much more difficult it is to get attention with the inner child, because by the time we're adults, we're already with children, having full lives, and there's a screaming child inside already, and still, or we date people that are still so in the dark and emotionally disconnected, or immature, or spiritually bypassing, or are disassociated. There are just so many things in our world that cry in our longing, that keep us from connecting. And it seems like the broad stroke is there's a selfish, it's my responsibility to be the change I want to see in the world. And because I'm a product of society, how do I, as a product of society, get the love and support that I also need, while also being surrounded by people who are doing the exact same things, without us judging each other, without us condemning each other, without having an idea that because we have reached a certain age, we should have certain things figured out. In my experience of my own unfolding is, until I went and lived in a foreign country for 8 years, I had everything together. I had an amazing job, amazing connection with God. I was a bodybuilder, and completely focused in on body, mind, spirit, and a high-end top level athlete. I was the first female on the all-Navy soccer team. And the next year they actually created a women's team. I mean, I am not afraid of a challenge, but man, getting into some of these places where the vulnerability has not been allowed, I can only imagine and then I do. Because for me to get in and feel my feelings and my tears and love myself here, I know is an invitation for other people to do it too. There is nothing threatening here. I don't have any malice. I have my humanity and I have my patterns, but that does not make me a bad person. And I think moving outside of our concepts and moving back into our sameness is really, really what's going to change. We all got the sin of condemnation. We all have been told and raised in the idea of right and wrong based on an unfair and unloving ruler. And that ruler now is in each one of us. As we listen to those same thoughts and believe those things also, until we stop perpetuating it in ourselves, until we stop asking people to show up differently and loving people where they are, asking questions, getting involved, creating a sense of safety, that we're not using people's vulnerability against them to hurt them more. And I've had that done so many times in my life. But there are things that make it difficult to talk about, and then let's not shame people because we are stuck in abusive patterns, self-patterns of shame and guilt. And not only a sense of self-isolation because we can't talk about it and we don't want to burden people, and then we feel burdened, and and we have created such a psychological dissonance. My heart is pleading. My inner child wants us to remember. My masculine, feminine aspects want peace. I can't control the world. I can't control anything outside of myself. I have zero capacity. Everyone's on their own journey, coming to these same realizations, coming to peace within their own hearts and minds, accounting for what they are creating in the world. We all are. We're all asked. And there's a point where it will catch up with us sooner or later. We can pretend the white elephants in the room aren't there for only so long. The subconscious holds until you start acting it out, so we can actually see it and then own it. There's so much here for us. First, my asking is to start looking inside. Start looking and seeing what hurts. Because that hurt needs attention. Because that hurt is hurting other people. And it's holding people hostage and accountable for the things that have been done to you and choices that you have made that you didn't even want to do. And had you been taught a different way, had you known that the different way is possible, I'm sure you would have chosen something else. I am so sure. And so sure of your innocence. So my question is, can we start looking inside? So that we start taking care of ourselves? And becoming a whole people, so we stop trying to manipulate and make other people be something different for us so that we feel safe? Can we just start recognizing we don't feel safe and looking at why? Yeah, we live in a lot of ways in an unsafe society. To what? To have tears, to be vulnerable, to open up. And yet, don't we long to have this intimacy? Don't we long to sit in front of each other and just say, hey, I'm hurting. That's all. The other person just be like, oh, yeah, let me hold you. I think if we were to really get inside our universal mother's heart, not our human mother, but our universal mother, she might just surprise us. Yes, I want to hold you. Yes, I want to hold all of that. Yeah, you're really hurting, aren't you? Yeah, I hear how much you're suffering. I'm so sorry. Yeah, it's really hard. Yeah, I get how hard that is. I love you so much.